reality of what it is to be an agent.
Yeah, so the reality of it is really you're kind of like that, you're everything wrapped in one. You're the recruiter at some point or the scout, where you have
Yeah.
to scout talent. You have to be able to negotiate contracts. You have to be able to oversee everything that's going on with that athlete. So, you're pretty much speaking on behalf of the athlete.
Right.
So you're everything mixed in one. Sometimes you're the planner. I mean, I have an athlete that's getting married, and I find myself helping to plan their wedding, and I actually enjoy it though. But
Yeah.
you're a little bit of everything. You're the marketer. Like I said, you're the marketer. If there's a problem medical wise, just overall, you are everything to them. At least the good ones are.
Yes. I'm excited for you to see this week's episode, but before we get to that, I have a message for you. If you're a parent of an elite athlete or a coach of a high-performing team and you're looking for some help or assistance with making them more mentally resilient, perform with more confidence, be more consistent, anything like that, then this is for you. I have an 8-week program all designed to address exactly that, to help your athlete be at their best on a more consistent basis and not get tripped up by those little voices in their head and getting down on themselves for mistakes, but performing like we know they can. So what I want you to do is don't delay, just grab a time on my calendar through this link, and let's set up a time to talk about your specific situation and how what I'm offering in my 8-week program can help. Okay? So it's brindrescher.com/free consultation. So click this link, grab a time on my calendar. I look forward to talking to you. And now on to this week's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Mental Advantage podcast. I am excited. I know I feel like I say that every week, but this week's guest is different. I have never had an agent on the podcast. Obviously, we've talked to athletes, we've talked to trainers, we've talked to coaches. We have not talked to an agent, which is a very important component of the process of athletics, particularly professional athletics. So I'd like to welcome Maggie Ntim. Is that correct? Am I saying that correctly?
Ntim.
Ntim. So it is Ntim. I didn't know if the N was silent. I should have asked that.
It is. The N is silent.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so Maggie Ntim, and welcome to the podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, well, I'm Maggie Ntim, from New York City, from Queens to be exact. So salute to everybody from Queens and Brooklyn, Harlem, Bronx, and all those good places of New York City. Where do I start? Like you said, I'm an agent, business owner, marketer, kind of got my hands in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. Okay, I'm excited for this opportunity. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. We're so glad that you're here. And notice that she did rep Queens specifically, because you've got to be specific about those boroughs, right? You can't just be like, I'm from New York, right? Because everybody wants where are you repping, right? So awesome. Welcome. Okay, so the first thing I like is I always, in the introduction of the podcast, I talk about superheroes. And everybody has an origin story. So how did you were you an athlete at one time? How did you get into the world of sports agent, right? So you can kind of take us through a brief, synopsis of that.
Yeah, kind of sort of was an athlete, but not really. Played basketball primarily, probably like elementary days, and then, stopped, but was always into sports. So like basketball, soccer, those were always my loves. Growing up in New York, being a Knicks fan, used to watch basketball games with my grandfather, and my uncle taught me how to play, and I wanted to shoot like Reggie Miller, so I had to work on that. But couldn't play, soccer because we just couldn't afford to put me through that. And but it was always another passion of mine, and then started to kind of learn a little bit more about some of the other sports, like football, American football, we should say, and baseball and all those different sports. But I knew that because I couldn't grow to be the athlete that I wanted to be, the business side was always there, like wanting to work within the sports sector. Case in point, part of the reason I went to undergrad for business and then went to grad school and pursued a master's in sports management, and will be, soon pursuing a degree in sports law. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so, it's the passion has always been there. And I just, I'm happy that I'm able to make some type of impact within athletes' lives. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, being an agent is an interesting job, right? Because obviously, your job. Well, let me say what I think it is, and then you tell me what it really is, right? Because I think there's probably some misconception, right?
yep.
So, right, because some people have these views of agents as kind of being the money person, but like kind of out for only the money, right? And then
Yep.
there's the other side of it, which is kind of like I don't want to put it this way, but just for misconception, not that I believe this, athlete babysitting, right? Like you got to kind of be
Mhm.
the kid gloves and I got to be careful of the egos and all that. What's the reality of what it is to be an agent?
Yeah. So the reality of it is really you're kind of like that. You're everything wrapped in one. You're the recruiter at some point or the scout, but you have
Yeah.
to scout talent. You have to be able to negotiate contracts. You have to be able to oversee everything that's going on with that athlete. So, you're pretty much speaking on behalf of the athlete.
Right.
So you're everything mixed in one. Sometimes you're the planner. I mean, I have an athlete that's getting married, and I find myself helping to plan their wedding, and I actually enjoy it though. But
Yeah.
you're a little bit of everything. You're the marketer. Like I said, you're the marketer. If there's a problem medical wise, just overall, you are everything to them. At least the good ones are,
Yes. That's
because at the
important.
end of the day, you work for the talent. The talent doesn't work for you, so you have to be everything. And like I said, the good ones.
Right.
There are some that may see it as like just a money grab. It's just a transaction, and
Right.
that's it. And there's more to it than that. So yeah.
So speaking of that, like, and thank you for speaking to that. And I know you're one of the good ones. That's why we have you here because you're awesome, and
Mhm.
you're one of the few black females that are in the world of football, and we're talking about the biggest sport of the world, soccer, right? But before we
Mhm.
get to that, because I totally want to talk about that,
Mhm.
before we get into that, what was like the biggest surprise about being an agent that you didn't know? Like, something you encountered, you're kind of like, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Oof, man, so many. I would probably say it's a mixture. So it's dealing with so many egos, but also to breaking through when you're dealing with the different leagues, and especially like you said about football being like the major sport,
Yeah,
number one, global. So it's a global. So
right,
there's a lot. There's dealing with the international piece of it. So dealing with people within Europe. So now you got language barriers. You have contracts are different as well. The leagues are different. So what may happen in America is not going to happen necessarily in Europe. So dealing with all the different changes and challenges, players. Sometimes you have to make switches. I've made changes, and we'll kind of get into that,
yeah,
you know, as we talk more about just dealing with facing some of the challenges and having to make those tough decisions.
yeah,
But I would say it's a little bit of that.
yeah,
It's like dealing with the talent, dealing with the different contracts. It's different,
right.
especially in this sport. It's very different.
And after going to school, and I know you said you're going to go to sports law, and obviously that helps you understand. But is
Mhm.
there some degree of like you can't have learned this in school? This is on the job training type stuff.
Yeah, dealing with people,
Yeah,
dealing with people. You can't go to school for that. You can't be taught that. So if you don't understand too that it's so critical to have relationships, it's going to be tough. If you're
mm,
not a relationship person, if you're not a person that kind of has that outgoing personality where you can talk to people, this isn't for you.
mm.
This isn't for you. Because part of being an agent is you have to get out there, you have to network with people, you have to put yourself out there, put your name out there, because you can let your players do it for you, but who's to say if it's all going to be good?
Yeah.
So you got to be like, those are things, those people skills, you cannot be taught.
I love that. It's so important. I mean, this is what we hear from the coaches. We hear from the athletes, right? Yeah. They just want to feel like, a real person, and it's all about relationship. I mean, you can't just boil it down to business or the sport. It's like, how am I relating to this person? Because in order to be able to represent them, work with them, get them what they need, and also have them be happy, it has to be a good relationship, right? It's almost like dating, right? But not really, not in the right. Yeah.
Something like that.
Right. There's some courting, and then there's some okay, are we going to make this official? Yeah. Because I mean, most people keep their agent around for a really long time, right?
If you have that relationship, if it's a great relationship and it's not just transactional, yeah. I mean, we've seen it. If we talk in the sport of soccer, football, Cristiano Ronaldo's a good one. I think he's been with George Mendes since he was like a teenager.
Wow.
And they've been rocking ever since, and which is very, very good, because after a while, when you start to make a lot of money and things like that, you'll see different things where the agent just starts kind of doing things that's out of the ordinary. And I think with those two, their relationship is one that I've always admired in this sport, because, I mean, me, having to know George Mendes, like he's awesome. Had the pleasure of meeting him a few times, and he's just phenomenal. So when I look at what they do, I'm like, yeah, that's the goal. That's the type of relationship you want.
Hashtag goals, right? So like, awesome.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if George saw the vision in the beginning, but it's like you have that, and you're like, this
probably has. Yeah, I mean, most agents, the good ones, most of them tend to be visionaries too, and that's part of the role as being an agent too. You have to be like a visionary. You got to be able to see that talent. Oh my gosh, like that's a talent that is special.
Yeah.
So you got to have it all put in together.
So if I wanted to break into being an agent, which I'm not interested at this time, but so don't worry, I'm not coming for anything, and not that there's not enough to go around. I know. But if you wanted to break into being an agent, and you talk about that visionary piece, right? Like, do you recommend, because, a lot of people say, oh, I want to go sign a Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And like you're saying, they got a super solid relationship. That's going to be tough, right? So where do you recommend when you talk about visionary? Should we be looking at college? And then obviously on the global stage, we're talking about the 16Us and the 20Us and all the different levels, right, of club soccer here in the United States, and then, the different levels of Premier League over there, and, and all around the world. So where do you recommend that one should be instead of, should they be going for the big dogs, or where should they start?
I think every agent is different. Their eye for talent is different. I think it also depends what you watch the most of and what you know. Everybody can go for the top.
Right.
It's hard to get there. So for me, I look at the youth primarily. Yeah. And there's so many talented players that it's hard to say which one is going to go.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just kind of know, like your gut, your heart will tell you, like, okay, I think this one is going to go. I think this one is going to be it. So for me, it's mostly youth. I watch college soccer a lot, so that's kind of where I focus.
Yeah.
The current players too, sometimes, because current players mostly probably done went through 4 to 5 different agents throughout their career. So sometimes too, they could be changing, they could be wanting something new. So it's a mixture of like, just once again, putting yourself out there to let them know, like, hey, I'm an option too if you are looking to switch. But I think it's mostly what you know best, what you can speak to best. Because there's nothing worse than like a person who only watches like MLS, Premier League, but they end up with an academy player and can't even pitch that academy player to a club because they really don't know.
Gotcha.
So it's important to kind of find that niche and then take it from there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things I felt like you were saying too is be a fan of the sport. Like you really need to be a
Yeah.
deep, like it's not just like, oh, like we talked about being a good agent is not going for the money grab or just seeing dollar signs when I look at, because obviously everybody wants Cristiano Ronaldo, everybody wants Kristen Press,
Because
everybody
everybody wants a
wants
big, everybody
right,
wants a big name. I mean, it
right.
makes your job easier too as an agent.
Right, right. So of course, that's not does make you unique. It's kind of like when I tell my players, like,
Yeah.
I want to win. I'm like, okay, so does everybody else. What's your real goal here? Because that's not that's not specific enough, right?
Right.
So so I like that. Be a fan. Also, like you said, like, and look up and down, right? And then start to learn the leagues and the different ways that they interact. And like you said, so that you can be a better pitch. Being able to be a better pitch your players so they can be on the pitch, huh? No? Okay.
Yep.
That was bad.
That's right.
So they can stay on the pitch, right? Okay.
Yes.
So we know, as we've alluded to, soccer is the world that you spend most of your time. We just call it here soccer in the United States because we always got to be different, but it's called football everywhere else. Okay. So talk to me about, like, obviously you're a Black female, the world of soccer, not exactly teeming with a lot of us, a lot of faces of color, not exactly, right, especially as you go up some of the players, it's getting a little bit more prevalent, but definitely not as you go up the thing. So talk to me about that process. Like, was that daunting for you to, like, we talk about the mental advantage, like to go over and decide to kind of penetrate that world?
Absolutely. Like I said, I've always been a fan of it, but I just couldn't play. My family wasn't able to put me through the academy, so they would kind of like pick up a ball and shoot, kick it around or something. For me, stepping into the world, before I came into it, I was working corporate and had a couple of jobs and was at Coca-Cola and was dealing with the World Cup and U.S. soccer, and it was great. But the passion was always like, man, I need to get into this. And I had to go in through the marketing side because I spent about 10 years in marketing. And so sponsorship marketing, to be exact. And breaking through, I was seeing all of this and I was like, man, and as I would talk to agents, I noticed they just really didn't understand the marketing side. It was like a foreign language to them.
Yeah.
They thought, okay, if I'm Cristiano Ronaldo, the deals will just always come. But I'm like, not everybody has a Cristiano Ronaldo. So what are you doing for that player on the marketing side? And so I said, man, I'm going to go through the process to become an agent because I've always wanted to do this. And I've always wanted to do it within soccer. It was either soccer or basketball, maybe even baseball, but baseball didn't work out. So I said, okay, let me do it within soccer. And I looked and searched for women agents, and I came across one in France who was awesome, but she didn't look like you and I.
Yeah.
In America, I couldn't find one. Couldn't find, not even, it's not even about it being a Black or Latina or Asian, even Caucasian woman. I couldn't find one in America. So I'm like, where are the women? There's got to be female agents. And there were a couple in London, but it just wasn't happening in America. And so I said, man, there's no one that looks like me that could understand. So I would then turn to the men and, reached out and didn't get feedback, but some of the great agents in Europe really were supportive and helpful and shared great advice. And that's where I got a lot of my advice from. And I had one particular agent, super agent, who told me, he's like, look, you're in America, if you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
He's like, I think you got to do it and take it slow. All it takes is just one player to believe in you.
Yeah.
And I went through the process. And when I hired my first client on the soccer side, Hugh Roberts, shout out to Hugh, Hugh said, he was actually doing a podcast and wanted to interview me just on some like, hey, networking, I read about you, blah, blah, blah. So we start talking, we do the interview. Then he's like, look, I'm actually looking for an agent. And I'm like, but you do know I'm new to this.
Yeah, exactly.
you do know that I'm a female. Let's just get that straight because I don't want to hear anything later. So he's like, I know. I said, okay. We started working together. We still work together now to this day, have a very great relationship. I mean, we've basically become family. He's going to get married soon and I'm like in the process of helping him with his fiance, like we're putting that together. So and we've been through at least 3 contracts now and it's been phenomenal. He's like, Maggie, to have a woman a black woman at that, represent me and be able to get me a contract that I doubted. He doubted it. He didn't think it would
Right.
happen, but it did. He's like, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. And so I think with that helps me out so much because I've had people tell me it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. I received a lot of hate emails from agents,
Wow.
other agents in Europe that, oh yeah, starting out was rough. It was rough. It was like, you shouldn't be doing this. Leave this to the men. Also got into a couple of racist
Yeah.
things, but I'm just like, man, they don't know who I am. They don't know me.
That's
They
right.
don't know me. And I tell people all the time, in my past, the companies I've worked for, the bosses I've had, working for companies like G Unit Records, which is 50 Cent's label,
Yeah.
having a chance to work with him, I feel like he prepared me so much for just life, And so I'm like, man, they don't know the ambition, the drive that I have because it's bigger than a dollar to me for this. This is passion. This is my love. And so there's no way that anybody's going to stop me from doing this because this is God's plan. And I'm just basically walking in purpose and it's going to take a lot to stop me. So I'm still here.
I love that. This is so important that people that are listening about that adversity and overcoming it, being resilient, right? So like coming into a field where you couldn't even find a mentor that looked like you, not even sorry, didn't just look like you was the same gender. And then, top that off, you add that. So then it's like, it's kind of like if it doesn't exist, you have to be the first. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously the industry industry was resistant. They was like, nah, don't be coming in here. That's one thing that's been, the world of soccer has been a certain way for so long, right? And because it's all over the world, you're dealing with an old boy network that goes back. I mean, soccer is one of the oldest sports too. So we're talking about, a lot of that whole patriarchy and, masculine energy and stuff like that. So, I mean, kudos to you for sticking with it. Like you said, they don't know you. They don't know what's inside of you. So it's like, okay, we'll see. We'll see. And I love that you were honest with your first client too. You just were like, yo, I'm new. Like, I don't want no issues. Like if you want
what he said to me was that I've never come across a black woman in this space from the agent side. So he's like, this is new. Even talking to people from US Soccer, they were like, you're the first to do this. And, many people ask me, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's not about being the first. It's about who comes after. That's what I care about. So it's like the work that I do every day. It's like, am I doing it right? Because it's like, I'm on the chopping board, it's like either we're going to say she was good or she was lousy. And, I don't want any of that. So, so, it's all those things. And yeah, like you said, just being honest with my client and all my clients, really, everyone.
Well, yeah, that was one thing I liked about you when I heard you on Clubhouse. You always seem like a straight shooter, right? And you're nice and personable. And I think it's wonderful that, you have that relationship. And just like you said, it only takes one. And, it's interesting because, it's only one, right? But it feels like it takes forever to get that one. But once you get that one and then they are happy, then the rest, because, I've been going through that myself with, wanting to get more pro athletes. And they're like, you just need one. And I was like, I know. But how do you get that one? How do you get that one?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of referrals in the past and, when it came down to pitching clients, it was mostly like brands and stuff like that. So I didn't really know how to pitch an athlete on joining. So it was quite a challenge, but I had to do it when I signed my first woman footballer. And so I had to, pull some strings, make some phone calls, really do a lot to try to get this player. And I had to convince this player to come out of retirement because I felt like she retired too early. She wasn't ready. I was like, look, you still have a lot left in you to play and be, and be successful. So it was like dealing with that whole thing. And, once I got through it, it became like the norm with every other player, but it's still a challenge because the reality is I'm going up against bigger agents, bigger agencies. So it's not the easiest. I would say to future agents or just agents in general wanting to pitch players, do your homework.
Yeah.
Do your homework. Know everything you can about that player, and really present yourself in a way that you can stand out. Be honest, but also to let them know, like, it's not saying you have to bash the other agents, but let them know why you are the perfect fit for them,
Mm.
and give them something to remember you by.
Ooh, so give me an example of that. What you just said there. Something to remember.
So for me, um, part of the requirements to sign with Trinity 3 agency is two things I look for: marketing and just community aspect, right? So in other words, my players have to be able to participate in one community event for their team, one for just their own like hometown where they come from. And so that's a little bit different. It's not the norm, for one. And for two, I tell the players all the time, look, can you call your agent at 2 in the morning and know that they're going to pick up or they're going to call you right back? Is your agent going to go hard for you in terms of just creating those marketing plans for you, really making sure you're doing well on the pitch? So it's a lot of those things that I kind of leave them with. And also, too, I think for me, what has helped is because I'm a female,
Yeah.
but also, too, I came from entertainment. You know, I came
Mm.
from the music world, so I didn't come from playing soccer as an athlete. So I think a lot of times people always remember that. They're like, oh yeah, she's coming from a
Yeah.
whole different space, but has worked within soccer in terms of marketing, but she's coming with something different.
Yeah.
So
I see that as an advantage too, because sometimes I think what some people don't think about is when you have seen something over and over and over and
yep,
over again, you have blind spots. You don't
yep,
think you do, but you do. When you're
yep,
new and hungry, you see things differently. And of course, you're still learning the ropes, and definitely a lot a veteran can teach you. But a new
yep.
person is like, wait a minute, what about this? And you're like, I never thought about it like that. And
Mm-hmm.
bringing the wealth of, like you said, of the
Yep,
entertainment side over of like, this is how we used to
absolutely,
do it over here. And you're like, oh, we don't do that in soccer, but who says we can't? So yeah,
exactly,
love that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's fantastic. Awesome. So you gotta be open to those perspectives, athletes, right? We gotta be open to like seeing things differently, and that's fantastic. Okay. So when we talk about, like you said, you've got male athletes and you've got female athletes. Do you have international as well as
yep,
on the okay, so you have
absolutely.
on both sides. So let's talk about what do you feel like as I mean you are female, but we don't have to make that a big deal, but dealing with the different genders of talent and the different dynamics of what it is to be a professional male soccer player and a professional female soccer player. Talk to us a little bit about that kind of dynamic.
So different, so different. I'm not even gonna touch on the international side. I'm
Yeah.
gonna just stick with America real quick
Hmm.
with this. So the salaries are so different.
I know.
As the NWSL, U.S. Women's Soccer, they fought so hard for equal pay. We got that for the NWSL. They now have a CBA. So now the
What
minimum
does
salary
CBA
is like
stand for so people know what that means?
collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And so now that they have that, it's good. Still a lot more work to be done.
Yeah.
And I say that because the salaries. Like, there's
Right.
no way that you go to school for 4 years or 3 years. You're getting you're at a D1 school, you're getting a top notch education, and you're coming out making like 20,000
Yeah.
as a professional athlete. No way,
Yeah.
no way. So um, it's looking at those issues and trying to change that. And then on the men's side too, some of them, if they're lucky within MLS, they have reasonable salaries. But USL, which is United Soccer League, that's the second division for the
Okay.
men's side. I have players within that league, and yeah, it's very different too. The salaries is one thing, and
Yeah.
then working with them. I
Yeah.
noticed, for me at least, just my experience and being very candid, is that the guys are so easy to
Mm.
work with. The women are too. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say all.
Yeah.
I've had my share. I've had great ones, like the ones that I have on my roster now, and I had
Yeah.
some that we just had to part ways because sometimes the reality and what they wanted just wasn't reality.
Got it.
And I can only do but so much. And so I think with that, sometimes with the men, it just seemed a little bit easier because it's like, all right, boom, boom, this is that. And for me, I want it to be where it's easy on both sides. But obviously, for the women, we have so much work to do within this space that, you know, it will come to that in due time. But
Yeah. Have you seen, so like, yeah, when we're talking about, obviously we know with the advent of the NIL, okay? So when we talk about going down to the college level, right? And
yep,
for those of you that don't know, name, image, and likeness is what NIL stands for. So as you go down, so like, Maggie already alluded to the fact that the women's soccer finally got equal pay on
yep,
the NWSL, I mean, not NWSL side, excuse me, the US soccer side, right? So we're not talking about the professional leagues. So we're still working on that, correct? Their collective bargaining agreement does not extend
no,
to. Oh, it
it's
is
in
across.
motion now. Yeah, it's
Okay,
in
okay.
motion now for NWSL, but there's still so much more work to do
There's
in
still
terms of
more there,
salaries.
right? Right,
In terms
but
of
when we talk
salaries, there's a lot
the
more.
actual women's league, like the U.S. soccer, men's U.S. soccer, and women's U.S. soccer, like when they do the World Cup and stuff like that, that's
Yep.
going to be even. But
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So which is amazing, like that is a huge step forward. And I
Huge.
mean, we
Huge.
bring up Venus and Serena and their fight for equal pay in tennis, and it's happening across the board. It's we haven't gotten there with women's basketball yet. And I know it's something that's in the works because I know they've had new agreements, they've done some things,
Yeah.
right? But I think the biggest challenge that they're always hearing is, oh well, more people don't watch women's soccer, right? And then it's like the
Mm-hmm.
chicken and egg, right? Because the broadcasters don't, and the sponsors and all that. So what as you go down to NIL, right? As we're starting to get these kids sponsored sooner, are you starting to look at college athletics or I mean, maybe you already were, but is that something now that you can go in and get a deal because now you can grow with that athlete?
I'm so glad you brought that up. So absolutely. I've been taking my time with it.
Yeah.
Because so throughout my agency Trinity 3, we do more than just athlete representation. We
Okay.
do management of talent, so whether that's athletes, entertainers, and a bulk of the agency was started based off of sponsorships and
Okay.
being able to work with brands and work with companies to put brands and talent together. So whether that's an athlete or an entertainer. So
Okay.
when I look at my portfolio of brands that I work with and I look at the athletes, and especially on the college level, I'm like, man, there's so many that we can work with.
Yeah.
Um, and so, me being a fan of like basketball, soccer, like, pretty soon you'll see we have some basketball clients that's going to come on the NIL side.
Mhm.
And then really on the soccer side, I've been really wanting to do a lot, especially with the women,
Yeah.
more so with the women in college. And so I have a few that I'm in talks with, and we're going to see where this goes. And it's a process because I
Yeah.
started off educating players. You know what I'm saying? That's what's so important, to educate them on NIL, what that really is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so to answer your question, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. That's
Absolutely.
great. So when we do talk about NIL and we talk about sponsorships, I believe there's some talk about the equal. That's a great way to level the playing field through sponsorships, right? So we go with a Casey Krieger, right, coming out of with football, and all of a sudden it's like, man, they just look. Oh, let's put a bunch of sponsorships on that athlete because now it doesn't really matter so much of what's the upside of all the pay, but it's like, oh, there's this national lens on her. So how do you balance that where you don't just, like we look at Mikey Williams coming out of high school, he's got millions of followers. We don't know if he's going to be good for you know what I mean? So what's your advice as far as that's concerned? Because how do we balance that looking at, the long-term longevity of that athlete?
Yeah, I think it's, once again, it's being that visionary, having an idea. I mean, you brought up Mikey Williams. Mikey Williams is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We don't know what he's going to be like the next step, whether he's going to go to college, whether he's going to go pro. We
Yeah.
just don't know. And we don't know whether he's going to be as good as he is now.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of those where it's working with the talent, it's working with the brand to kind of figure out how, at least for me, my thing is working with brands that want to really invest in these athletes long term.
Yeah.
So once they're done with college, once they're done with college and they go pro, or they're done with high school. Like, it's really wanting to work with them as a team, creating a partnership and not just having it be a one-off deal.
Okay.
And so, and it's special talent. Once you start working with that talent and you kind of build that relationship, you know them, the trust is there. After a while, you'll have
Yeah.
an idea.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, obviously dealing with athletes, we're talking about some egos, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about emotions, we're talking about a lot of different things, and obviously on the
Yeah.
mental side, this is where obviously the advent of talking about mental health, and I know
Yeah.
about the recent suicides that have happened with the
Yeah.
high school athletes, and we don't know exactly what the cause was, and but when we are dealing with like a Mikey Williams, these different athletes and how much do you factor in that mental capacity or not capacity, I don't use that word, but their mentality and what you see, because I could be really good, but do I want to deal with you?
Right. Um, I've dealt with this a few times with my roster. I check on my players probably once or twice a week. Um, and for some, they're not used to that.
Yeah.
They're used to the agent maybe calling them around renewal time or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I do that because, like you said, with that the mental health is
Yeah.
so important, right? And so I check on them and I'm asking questions. And what I also do is, like, I try to do like a once a month meetup, like on Zoom or something like
Yeah.
that, just to kind of get that face to face interaction and see, is everything okay? Because I've dealt with this. I've had a player tell me everything was okay, and then later on it was a major, major, major issue.
Wow.
And I'm just like, why didn't you tell me? Why did I have to find out how I found out?
Yeah.
And I said, don't ever feel like you can't. I was like, I always reiterate that every time I talk to each and every one
Yeah.
of my players, and I want them to know, don't ever feel like you cannot pick up that phone to call me for something. And I do that also because, like, I myself have gone through that.
Yeah.
I have my days where
Yeah.
I don't want to be bothered. I have my days where I don't mind. And so I know what that's like, and I put myself in their shoes, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, it's something that I always want to make sure they're good,
Yeah.
like, good. When I ask them, like, are you good? Don't tell me, oh yeah, I'm fine. No, you're good. Like, is
Right.
everything okay? So, and that's also why too I try to fly out to the cities they're in, check out a game, sit with them, have lunch or dinner with them, all the time, just to make sure things are good, because it's important, because they go through a lot.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
lot.
Especially, right. Like, I mean, there's a lot of time on the road. You could be isolated. People don't understand the
Sometimes it's
circumstances.
playing time, not getting
Yep.
enough playing time. That
Exactly.
can that can really mess with a person's mental. So
Oh yeah. So you have these athletes, and this is really important, right? They play really top of their game for so long, and then they get up to a level where everybody's good. And so they're used to being the best. And so sometimes when you're not always going to get the same amount of playing time, or you're not going to have the same role, that can be quite a downshift for an athlete.
yeah.
So what would you say? And I mean, like you said, you go through it yourself, but obviously being that it's maybe not to say that it's not common with the agents, because more agents,
Yeah.
right, and what that is, but what kind of told you to start doing that? Was it the advent of kind of the talk around mental health, or is this something you naturally just knew to do?
And I was naturally doing that, naturally, from the time I started. And to be honest with you, just in general, that's the type
Yeah.
of person I am.
Yeah.
If a person is in my life, they're going to hear from me at some point. I'm going to check on you, whether it's social media, and that's a good thing too. Like, with a lot of my clients too, like, I always interact with them on social media, so it's kind of like the phone call or that text message is just icing on the cake. But the social media helps me a lot too, to see that they're okay, they're doing well, they're doing good, they're thriving where they are. Um, and so, yeah, it's a natural thing with me.
That's great. That's great. I think that would be so important. So when we talk about signing with Trinity 3, is it that I'm saying that correct, right? I
Yep,
want to
you
make
are.
sure. I
You
was like,
are.
wait, it's not Trinity Free 3, right? Yeah, okay. All right.
Nope.
Now, when I sign with Trinity 3, or I'm interested in, like, maybe I want you because I heard good things about you, what attributes, you said the community aspect, mentality wise, not just health wise, right? What are you looking for in an athlete?
Whew. I'm looking for one that knows themselves. They're ambitious. They're goal driven because I'm very ambitious. So it doesn't work when someone who's ambitious works with somebody that's not. Because to be honest with you, all it's going to do is bring me down
Mm-hmm.
when I'm trying to pull you up.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be in a position where you want so much more for that person, but they don't want that for themselves. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of things that I look for, like I said, their drive, their ambitious, their work ethic. Another part of this is goals. So my agency, we when we first sign on a client, we do an assessment. So we ask them to share 10 goals, 5 for what they want to do on the field, 5 for what they want to do off the field.
Mm.
And my team and I, we read through them, and I read through them thoroughly. Have a pretty good memory, so I know what each person wants. Because what that also does is it holds me accountable to make sure that they're achieving those goals.
Mm.
And when they're not really putting too many goals, it makes me wonder, like, man, is it that they just don't have the confidence in themselves? Do they just don't, believe in themselves as much? Do they not see like they have all the potential in the world? But when I read them and I'm like, man, they got goals, like big goals. And I think the exciting part is going back and being able to check off some of those goals. Like, because
Nice.
for me, I'm a person who lives by that. Like, since I was a kid, I had a manifestation journal and I write down all my goals. And till this day, I go back to it and I could check, 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 check. And to see like that the list is getting smaller and smaller of what I need to accomplish, it just shows me that I've done great work, throughout my career. And so for them, that's how I want them to see that. Like, man, I set these small goals and we're already there. I mean, I was telling one of my clients yesterday, I said, man, if we look at on the field, I said, sis, there's only one more thing left because we didn't accomplish 4, but we accomplished more than even some stuff wasn't even on there, but we
Yeah.
accomplished more than what you wanted. And I'm just like, you're on your way.
Yeah.
You're
Awesome.
on your way. So,
Yeah, that's got to feel really good. And I love that you said like ambitious, driven, clear, like knowing themselves. How do you, so you do you do the goal thing, and you said like, I don't want to push you. I don't want more for you than you want for yourself. So that's really important. How do you check for how do they know themselves? If you don't mind me asking, like, how do you check for
mm, it's a good question. I think sometimes that'll just be through conversation,
Yeah.
but it also goes back to the goals,
Oh, okay. Right. So
right?
if my goal is
Because
like,
it gets them to think about what do they really want.
right.
And when they're hesitant, that lets me know like they're not, either it's not that they don't know or they're just not thinking about it.
Got it.
So now it gets them to think, it
Yeah.
gets them to open up their minds and think a little bit more and really figure out like, man, I know myself. I know what I'm a fan of. So I know I'm a fan of this brand and I would love to one day work with this brand. But I then come with the questions of why do you want to work with the brand?
Love that.
Or when you're doing what you're doing on the field, what's your why? What's
Mm.
your why? You know?
One of my favorite things is that you also have them have the off the field goals, because
Oh yeah.
field goals, because we know that obviously athletes are very focused, almost too focused sometimes, on everything that happens on the pitch, on the field, whatever. And there is going to be a post sports life, no matter what. It's inevitable. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter if you're Cristiano Ronaldo, if you're the
Yep.
15th guy on the bench. There is
Yep.
a time where you will no longer be a soccer player, right?
Yep.
So I think it's important to, like, yeah, like you said, like maybe you want to start foundation. What other things so that we can get those
So
components?
that's something that we've done already with one of our clients. We're getting ready to do that with another. There's a couple of other cool projects in the works with a couple of these clients. I'm super excited for them because I always tell them, look, align your purpose with what you're doing on the pitch with what you want to do off the pitch. And when you align the two, it will all come together. And aligning those two is what that defines your legacy as
Mm.
an athlete. That defines your legacy.
Yeah, I think it's so important that you're having them think about that, right? Like, because some
Oh yeah.
people don't like to think about any kind of post sports
Mm-mm.
life, but it's like you said, legacy, right? It's not just like what are you going to do now, but how are people going to remember you long after you've, put on the uniform? Okay, so I have a couple last questions. So, as you know, or maybe don't know, I work with athletes in the mental game space. Yes. One of the things is I talked to David Meltzer, who used to be, I think he's the guy from, Show Me the Money, Jerry Maguire, right? And so I talked to him about like, how does somebody who's a mental coach, right, work with an athlete or get access to like your clients? Do you think that's something important, right? Because I'm seeing it more on a reactive basis. Like I talked to an agent, he's like, well, if my players think it's important, like, yeah, we'll go get it, right? So how is Trinity 3 addressing that piece? And not, I mean, obviously knowing that, like you said, you're already taking the proactive approach and checking in, but you're also very busy doing what you need to do on the agent side. So what are you doing, or what advice would you have for approaching an agent? Or do you think the agent is the contact? Is there a better way?
I think doing it how you've been doing it. That's your formula.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't mess up the formula if it's if it's working. But I think also too is maybe talking to the agents to make sure that they know their players. Make sure that their players are well. Sometimes if an agent has about 100 players, it's hard for him to tell you what's going on with each and every one of them.
Right.
I have a very small roster and I keep it that way because it allows me to deal with each and every one of their needs.
Right.
The only time someone could possibly tell me something with my player is if my player didn't tell me.
Gotcha.
And it's only because maybe they don't want me to know, because I always ask, are you okay? Is everything good? And I mean everything, from the physical, the mental, emotional. And when they tell me everything is great and it's going good, they're like, we wouldn't hesitate to pick up a phone and call you. That lets me know that, okay, they're in the right space. And if ever is something major, then I know they will let me know.
Do you think that, being in the world of sports, and like you said, you keep your roster small, so maybe not, but you said you do more than just provide the agent services, but you're doing management and different things. Do you feel like agents maybe would be well served to proactively address the mental aspect by having somebody or connecting their clients with it, like, making it a part, like you said, of the process? Like, my athletes need this. So, and, proactively, because I understand, like, if the athlete wants it, then you're going to go get it. But if the athlete doesn't say it, right, and, we get to where we have a problem, which is what I feel like we do in the world of sports, is like, oh, he's got a mental health problem. She's got let's get him with somebody, right? But what about the part of, like, developing them with that? What do you think about
Absolutely. That? I love that idea. I think it's like having a PR. It's like having a publicist. I have one in-house that works with me on things. May need them for something, may not, but it's always good to have them. And so I do like that aspect. And I think nowadays, with the way everything is going with the world, how the world is, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It definitely makes sense to have it a part of the companies. I think the leagues as well. I think most professional leagues should have it as well.
Yeah.
They tend to, but
they do.
But we don't hear much about it. We don't hear much about it until there's an issue.
Until there's an issue. Exactly.
Right. And so to your point, I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah, because one of the challenges that we've seen is that, and you hear this, and at least I've heard it from football, and sometimes when it's the team's psych, like let's say sports psych, right? It's like, I don't know if I want to tell them because they're employed by the organization, right?
That's true.
So it's like, I think it would behoove agents to have somebody that's there
in-house,
like giving, in-house, because then it's like, this is something that we keep over here. This doesn't have to be something that's shared with the organization, unless it was a situation where we had to wrap around and let them know, but with the player's consent, of course. But I think it's interesting because, of course, mental performance and sports psychology is two different things. But a lot of times the way that we've been responding to it is more on a reactive basis. There's a problem, let's address it, versus like, let's give them the skills because they're going through a lot, like you said. and you got people pulling them in 5 different ways: family, relationships, and then even the business aspect. And most of the time it's like, hey, just stay tough, keep your head level. These are the type of things. And I don't, it's like there's not actually any skills training at that level. So it's very interesting sometimes, like, like how do you proactively approach it? So just always curious if agents are open to that, because a lot of, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't, I'm new in that world, so I'm not going to make it seem like I've done with a ton of it. But and they were like, "Oh, talk to the trainers." But when you talk to the trainers say, "Talk to the agent." So it's like
Mm-hmm.
wherever you go,
It's like a back
somebody's like,
and
"Oh yeah,
forth. They just
go
try,
here,
yeah,
go
they
there,
just
go
giving you
that."
the runaround.
Exactly. So you're just kind of like, okay. So yeah, go to, and then like you said, it is that one, but breaking in, right? Like once you
Yeah.
get your guy or your girl, then it opens up. But it's getting that one that can be challenging. So anyway, so when you are, I don't know, you have been an agent, but and you talked about having that player come out of retirement. How have you had any athletes that have transitioned, like they're about to leave the sport, and what do you guys do regarding that? If any.
Yeah. I've had one, Brandon Miller, who recently announced his retirement a few months ago, and we have a pretty good like relationship now, where it's just more like on business. So
Mhm.
it's like being able to help him out with things if he needs help with stuff, any business moves that he's trying to make, and just really helping him get through that process. And so that's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was my first.
Nice. So yeah, so basically the agent relationship should transition to all the
Yeah.
phases. Okay, got it. Okay, awesome. So it
Yep.
like helps with that. Well, fantastic. Okay, so one more question and then we're gonna get to the rapid fire questions. Okay.
Sure.
What is Maggie's mental advantage?
Could be a little bit more specific with that.
Well, in other words, like what do you find helps you handle your job or be the boss that you are in
Yeah.
that world? Like what helps you navigate that in a way that makes you, unstoppable?
I think it's my drive. It's the my drive. It's the doubters.
Yeah.
A lot of the naysayers, the people that tell me you'll never be able to do this, or you'll never be able to do it. You'll never be successful. Those voices are always in my head as a reminder that I'm walking in my purpose. So it's a mixture of that, and then it's my faith, having strong faith that I was put here on this earth to do amazing things, and this is one of them. And that's a daily reminder. Like, you just got to keep going.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, it's time for the rapid fire questions. These are the most serious questions of the entire podcast. I hope you're ready, Maggie. I hope you're
I'm
ready.
ready.
All right. All right. So, what is your favorite snack right now?
Ooh. Mm. You know, I love Hershey's.
Like the kisses or the bar?
The kisses, the bar, the
Okay.
cookies and cream. And I'd probably say that, and like Reese's Pieces and a Nestle Crunch. I have such a bad sweet tooth. It's like, oh my gosh. I,
Yeah.
I would say those, and definitely I cannot live without my cookies and cream ice cream. Haagen
Ooh.
Dazs, to be exact.
Haagen Dazs. I was going to ask you the brand because we
Yeah,
need to know
yeah,
where do we go get
yeah.
the good stuff.
It's Haagen Dazs first, then it's Breyers, but it's Haagen Dazs cookies and
Dazs
cream.
is first. Okay, got it. Yeah, I have a friend that says I don't have a sweet tooth. I've got sweet teeth. That's how much I like sweets, right?
Yep. Yep.
All right. If you and we already talked about your favorite flavor of ice cream, so that's cookies and cream. Okay. Do you have a favorite super? Oh, sorry. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Wow, superpower. My superpower, my superpower would be to change, like really change the world. Really change the world.
So are you doing
No,
that through mind bending? Are you doing that through reading minds? Are you doing that through like superhuman strength, flying, that type of stuff?
I'd probably say reading minds.
Reading minds. Yeah.
Reading minds.
All right.
Reading
Yeah.
minds.
I had Michael Gervais on the podcast, and he works in the mental space, but he was like, "Yeah, reading minds." I was like, "I get that
Yeah,
from you." For other
reading
people,
minds, because I can be in the same space with someone, and like I was blessed with that, where something will give me a hint that this is not good with
yeah,
the body language. But if I'm able to read the minds and really change things, yeah,
okay, awesome,
that's the superpower that I would want.
fantastic. And do you have a favorite superhero?
Not really.
Nope, not into. Okay, no problem, no problem.
Not really.
I can usually
I mean,
tell a
I
lot
guess
about a
Superman.
person. But yeah, that's okay. Everybody doesn't like superheroes.
Superman is like close,
Superman,
probably
yeah,
the
I'm a
closest.
Superman fan myself. Some people don't like him
Yeah.
because he's an alien, because they're like, that's why they're more Batman people. But it's okay. I'm a
No.
Superman.
If I had to choose one, it would be Superman.
Yeah. All right. See, Maggie, I knew we would get along. See, that's
Yeah.
good. All right. All right. So this question, I like to ask it. Some of my friends say it's a little bit too like first world problems. But if you have, well, I know you have toilet paper at your house because you're human. But do you like to have it on the roll over the top or under the bottom, and why?
Wow, I've seen this. I saw it somewhere online, and
Yeah.
I've always questioned. I'm like, why do people ask these questions? But then it made me think about it.
Right.
I would have to say over,
Yeah. See, over. Now, why? Why do you feel like you're an over? Do you have a preference of that as far as that?
because I feel like if it's under, um, the last person that uses it
Yeah.
sometimes can have it hanging, and I have a bad pet peeve of seeing that.
Yeah.
I don't believe in wasting paper. I don't believe in wasting anything. So, um, I just like it over the top. I
Yeah.
just feel like it's a lot easier to just do it
Over
that way.
has been the most predominant for all of the people I've had on this athlete, focused
Yep.
podcast, athletics, so maybe that's the thing, but
Yep.
yeah, I'm an over myself. Now, here's the two most important questions. If I'm at your house and I put it under, are you going to change it when you go to the bathroom and notice that?
I'm definitely gonna notice it first.
Right.
Um, if it happens one time, I'm not gonna say nothing. But if it happens the second time, I might be like, you know,
Yeah. Can you put it the way
it,
that I like it? Right. Okay.
yeah,
Now,
like,
I'm
it's okay to
assuming,
see things and touch it, but please don't
please
touch my
don't
toilet
change
roll.
my
Like, leave
toilet.
my toilet roll how it was, please. I don't come to your house changing stuff, so please don't do that here.
And that
So,
was the next
and
question.
that's why I said if it happens the first time, I don't say nothing.
Yeah.
But the
I'll be
second
like, I'll
time,
let it
I'm gonna
slide.
say something.
Okay. And that
Especially
was
if,
the next question
because
I
you
was
know
going to
why?
ask
Because
you.
sometimes you got to tell people, because that's going to
Yeah,
turn into a habit. And if you don't let people know those things, they're going to feel like they can always do that.
absolutely. And that was the next question I was going to ask you, was whether you would change it at someone else's house, because some people will, but you
No.
said no.
Oh, no, I might just take a look at it,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to touch
But
it.
I'm not going to touch it. Right. I
I'm
got
not going to touch it.
it.
I may bring it up to you to say, hey, have you ever tried to
Yeah.
do it the other way?
I
That I
love
may
that.
make that suggestion, but I'm not going to touch it.
But I'm not
That's
going to
one
change
thing.
it. Okay. I love that. I love that.
I
Okay.
was raised not to touch people's stuff, so don't touch
There you
people's
go.
stuff. That's why I'm so adamant about people touching my things. I'm like, please don't.
There you
I don't know
go.
if you were
There you
never
go.
raised that way or told this, but you shouldn't touch people's stuff
Love
without permission, I should say.
without permission. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, who is your personal hero?
Wow. I'd have to say my grandmother.
Why?
Like, when we talk about Superwoman, I've, not just because she helped raise me, but I watched her, like, literally be the head of the household. And many people said, oh, but she was married. But she was married to someone that just wasn't, he was a great man, but she just possessed all those skills.
Yeah.
Be able to work, come home, clean the house, cook, take care of the kids, make sure everything was in order.
Mm.
So she has taught me that from a young age. And even now, at the age that she is, she's what, 75, she still has it in her.
Got it.
Still has it in her. And I'm like, man, if like, to me, that's the epitome of like a very strong woman that just does everything. Everything.
Which makes
When I
sense.
say everything, I mean
Everything.
everything.
Which
She
makes
cooks,
sense why
cleans.
you're like that.
She's a baker. She does it all. So,
All right. And then the last question, what does Maggie want to be remembered for?
wow. really making an impact, making an impact in people's lives. Like, I've done a lot of things in life that I was either the first, or it was like some stuff that just was never done. And it's all great, but it's like just making an impact. That's what means a lot to me when clients and people tell me, thank you so much for helping me either change my perspective on things and I see things clearer, or for helping me overcome challenges, for helping me become a better businesswoman or businessman, for helping me give back to the community I come from and where I play, and making a difference in these kids' lives. Like that's what I want to be remembered for.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, that concludes all of the questions. The last thing is, where do you want people to find you, reach out to you, connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on social. So on Twitter, it's Agent Maggie Ntim. On Instagram is Maggie.Ntim. And so you definitely find me there between those two outlets. And
Right.
yeah, reach out, interact.
Well, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
And
Thanks for
thank you.
being.
No, thank you so much. I thank you for what you're doing, and please continue to do it
Yes.
because it's so needed. It's so
Thank
needed.
you.
So I thank you for the opportunity, and just for all that you've been doing, especially for the world of sports and for these
Yeah.
athletes and agents. So thank you. I'm truly honored for the
Well,
opportunity.
thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie. I appreciate it. It's such a pleasure having you on. Y'all, that was Maggie and Tim, and we'll see you next time.